Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Herb Feaster. Welcome to our presentation titled Designing for Success, How to Increase Instructor Presence. I am joined today by Hannah Howell. She's an assistant professor of instructional technology and design at University of North Alabama. I'm Herb Feaster. I'm a professor of instructional design. And Natasha Lindsay, she's couldn't join us today, but she's a contributor to the presentation as well. We hope you enjoy our presentation and learn something from it, but let's go ahead and get started. Hannah, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Herb. So today, I think the first thing we need to do is we need to define instructor presence. Ohio State University defines instructor presence in online courses as the insertion of yourself into your course through the course design, the facilitation of the course, and direct instruction. So today we're really going to talk about how you can design certain elements within a course that naturally facilitate that instructor presence once the course is kind of passed off to your SME or your content expert, whatever term your institution uses. Now, before we move forward, I would like to kind of talk about that our department is set up in an interesting way because we are inherently instructional designers and we also get to design our own courses. So we're going to talk to you today about how we have built instructor presence within our courses from an instructional designer view and not necessarily from an instructional view. So really the benefits of increasing instructor presence within your course can really help your students succeed within your course and within the program. So the different benefits for increasing instructor presence would be increased student engagement and academic achievement. If your students know that you are invested in their educational experience, it can truly help them connect with the content and it can help them achieve your goals better. It can also increase trust between the instructor and student. If a student knows that you are invested in their educational experience, they may trust you with questions, and it may be less of an isolating experience for online students. And that kind of takes us to the increased sense of community. Research shows that students in online courses can feel very isolated. It can be a lonely experience. And so increasing your presence or the SME's presence within the course can really help overcome that. It can create a wonderful experience for online students.
Right. I've been in online courses. I know many of you have probably been in online courses, and the distance between you and an instructor and other members of a course is huge in those online courses. And so part of our goal is to somehow create strategies to minimize that distance and create these mechanisms so that our students who are in the course can feel connected. So what we want to do next is talk about some of those strategies and techniques that are going to help the students feel those and make those connections.
So over the next couple of slides, we're going to talk to you about 7 different ways that you can increase instructor presence from the design perspective. The first is going to be instructor welcomes. The second is going to be module overviews. The third is going to talk about a course schedule and how to create certain assignments that naturally give the opportunity for the instructor to interact with students. The next is going to be a help wanted discussion post. Then we're going to move into rubrics. Then we're going to talk a little bit about announcement features, and then we're going to talk about feedback. The first way we're going to talk about is your instructor welcome. And so when you create a course and you're designing it, you first want to give students a landing place, almost like a start here area. And you see an example from one of our courses. on this slide. So you see that students have access to the syllabus, they have access to class introductions, and they have access to an orientation course. And so when you click on class introductions, then you get to your instructor introduction area, which is going to be what you see on this slide. And so this is very important. It helps you feel human to your students, and it also helps them learn a little bit about you. It can be really hard, again, in the online space to connect with people, and giving a little bit of information about yourself can help your students understand that you are a person. It helps them learn a little bit about you, and it also helps them learn how to contact you should they need assistance within the course.
Yeah, I'll add to that. I think one of the important things, and I think you hit on it, letting your students know that you are a person and that you're real is really, really important. I mentioned earlier the creating these mechanisms or strategies to decrease this distance between your students and the course, the content, and you. And one of the things that these instructor welcomes do is exactly that. When you put this information up in front of them about, for example, the course welcome that introduces the course, what it's doing is establishing a relationship with the course for the student. So the student has some way to starting to set the groundwork for how they can navigate the course and find the important information from the get-go. The about me or the about the professor information allows the student to see again that there's that person, but it also, I think, opens the door for and allows the students to see that it's okay for them to be a person on their end as well. And it's through this these mechanisms that the students can feel your presence as a designer when you are building courses like this. And so those distances really decrease through these types of strategies.
Thanks, Herb. All right, the next way that you can increase instructor presence through the design of a course is giving students module overviews. And this is really important because students need a way to be introduced to the content that you're about to introduce to them. And so you see here, we use the purpose. So we give them an overview. We give them the why of the content they're about to learn, and then we also give them learning objectives. You will see some different alignment indicators there. So if you see CO2, that is what this particular module objective is connected back to on the course level. So that's also really important. Course maps are a large portion of the way we design here at the University of North Alabama. And so those are just indicators. But the idea here is to give students a good overview of what they're about to learn to help them connect with that content. And the instructor can do that, or the instructional designer can do that, to give students just really a good foundation to learn move into the learning activities and the different assignments and assessments that are built throughout the module.
Yeah, and I, just thinking about this particular slide and hearing you talk, Hannah, reminds me of some of my previous readings about schema theory and advanced organizers, which I think are really helpful for students to set them up for a learning episode, and how important it is for them to be able to see this information so that they have some way to organize what's getting ready to go in their mind. I know it's, again, in an environment like an online environment, it's important for them to have that and to feel comfortable as they move through a course. So really important strategy here.
So, all right, so the next thing we're going to talk about are course schedules, and then we're going to talk a little bit about assignments in this area also. So it's always important as an instructional designer to create a course schedule for students to follow. This helps establish instructor presence because it gives students a visual representation of the activities that are due within a certain course. And so our course schedules are built into simple syllabus here at the University of North Alabama. I know that's not necessarily the case at every institution, so ours automatically populates for us. But other acceptable ways to establish this course schedule would be through a Google Drive document, a Word document, a PDF, just something in the course that outlines everything the student should do module by module. And with that said, if you notice on this assignment schedule, you'll see on 1026, there is a final project proposal due that is worth 0 points. Now, at first look, that might look a little silly and like a waste of time, and your students may also think that. So we find that the 0 point value works for us, but if that doesn't work for you or your SME, you can always assign a very small point value to this. But the purpose of building in those assignments would be to build in the opportunity to give really specific feedback. So when we think about a final project and we think about the different ways that students may achieve the learning objectives we've laid out for them, that may be daunting. And so the last thing you want as an instructor is to give them this final exam or final project without proper feedback before. And so we use different draft assignments in order to give students that feedback and give them the opportunity to establish different criteria and expectations for what we expect them to turn in at the end of the course. And so we encourage you to build in those different assignments. We know a lot of that may be dependent on the SME that you're working with, but try to build those in as you can. It may not always make sense, but it's good to have in terms of providing feedback before a very large assignment is due, because feedback, as we'll learn in future slides, is very important for establishing instructor presence.
One of the things I'll add here is something I came to realize a few years ago. And I don't know if it's so much related to this course schedule, but I'll throw this point in here now. But I think, like I said, I don't know how long ago, but at some point when I was talking with my students about how they learn in online courses, somebody made the comment that they on the first day of a course, they actually download and print an entire course and put it into a binder. And the reason I'm saying this is it made me realize that whatever type of strategies or mechanisms that you're using to, for example, in this case, increase your instructor presence, you have to realize that, like in this case, in this example I'm providing, some of these students are going to be printing this information. So you want to make sure that it's going to be in a form that they can access and print, because that's how some of them work. Over the years, I started to check and ask more and more about that. And interestingly, I found out that there are a substantial number of students who do this, actually print everything that's in a course on day one, which I think lends to the notion that you should have everything ready on day one of a course, and any changes that you make, you have to make them aware of those changes. But just something that I'm thinking about as we take a look at this course schedule, and I thought it's important to bring up. So.
Thanks, Herb. I was one of those people as a student.
You're a printer?
Print it off, which is kind of ironic since I chose to take online courses. I still prefer to have things printed. All right, the next thing we'll talk about is the help wanted discussion post. And this is built into all of our courses, and it really provides a sounding board for your students. So if they just have a quick question that may not be urgent, or maybe they missed your office hours, they can reply here. And this is something that I, as an instructor, check daily when I log into the course, just to make sure no one has had a question. Now, you may also, from an instructor perspective, if you get to serve both roles like we do, you may want to check this frequently, because I honestly have had students ask questions about grades on this post. And so you want to make sure to remove those and reach out to the students individually for that. But this is just a great way to give students multiple options to connect with you and to ensure that you are available to them for the duration of the course. Students can, ask questions about assignments. They can ask questions about course content. Maybe they need some extra reinforcement with a topic, or would like some extra resources, or maybe they're just really excited about a certain topic and they want more. I've seen all of that here with this type of discussion post, but I would just encourage you to build these within the courses, but also for SMEs, how to know the importance of checking them regularly and making sure that no personal information, and that's actually built into the prompt, but I still have a student every now and then that will ask a question that is not really meant for the entire class to see. And another way this helps just build community is a lot of times your students will answer for you. And I have found that to be a really great resource to establish some student-to-student connections that's outside of the formal academic discussion boards that are in our courses, because maybe one student really understands this, or maybe they have already found extra resources. And so your students can actually use this to get feedback and to get help from you, but also from each other. Herb, did you have anything to add there?
No, I just think that's the help wanted is, I mean, I think one of the things, if there was anything I was going to add, it's that there's probably a relationship between how good the design is of a course and how many questions you get posted in the help wanted area. I think as, for example, if I am designing a course, and again, we're talking about instructor presence here, but just in general, if I'm designing a course for the first time, there's probably going to be a lot more help wanted questions posted than in the first iteration of a course than there would be the fifth or sixth time I teach the course. And I think that's normal and totally expected, but yeah, it's definitely needed. They have to have that mechanism to communicate with you. And I think by having that help wanted post, what you're saying to the folks who are in that course is that I want you to communicate with me if you have an issue. I'm not hiding. There is an open line here between you as the student and an instructor or whoever is designing that course, so that we can get something fixed if you don't understand something, or if there's something that is broken. And yes, things break all the time. I have, for example, a couple of instances in a course that where some of the material that went into the course, online material, the students couldn't access, and through no fault of mine, but nevertheless, it was something that had to be fixed, and it had to be fixed quickly because they needed access to it. So anyway, having those mechanisms let the student know that you're there and that you can help them when problems arise.
All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is rubrics, and these are so important for several reasons within a course. One, it helps communicate the expectations that you have for students for all of their assignments. And so really, when you create a rubric, you want to communicate how you're going to be grading. And speaking of grading, when you create a good rubric and a rubric that establishes some really good guidelines for your students, it helps your grading become more standardized. And so it's not as subjective as if you weren't using a rubric. And so we always suggest building rubrics out for anything that is graded, just because it helps kind of standardize that grading practice. And it also helps you communicate those expectations to your students in a visual way. And from an instructor point and from a design point, it also helps your SMEs grade assignments. So Herb, I think we all use rubrics the same way within this program, but it's really easy to go in and grade that assignment from the instructor perspective if we just have these boxes and we can go in and click in. And so our ratings are clearly identified in that we know exactly how many points each student is going to get for whatever category they fall into. And so it helps streamline grading for your SMEs, and it also helps communicate those expectations to students, which again can build trust, and it can also help build community within the course.
Right. And yeah, and that's an important point, because I know a lot of the assignments that we are including in our courses that the students have to do to demonstrate competency, they can sometimes be very complex. And so I know the rubrics are a way for you or me to highlight expectations, or to emphasize expectations of the assignment. So, for example, a 3/4 page description of an assignment, those expectations that we have, when somebody reads those, they can be, there's a lot of text there in many cases and a lot of descriptive information. But when we box it up and compartmentalize it, we have the opportunity to emphasize the things we want to emphasize that were included on that assignment description that was included in the module. So I think it's important to think about that as a strategy to help your students understand what it is you're expecting from a particular performance or product that you want them to produce.
Yeah, thanks, Herb. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about are announcements within the course. And so an announcement area is really just a quick way of letting your instructors communicate with students. So we use these in several different ways here at the University of North Alabama. And this is actually something that the instructional designer can build out for the SME should they choose to do so. So we always send out weekly reminders, and it just kind of piggybacks off the course schedule that we've already given students. And so we take little snippets of a week at a time, and what you're supposed to be working on this week, and then we give them a little preview of what they should be working on the next week. And we find this helps with instructor communication, and it also helps pace students, because they, if we give them a really long course schedule with all the due dates, it's really easy for things to get lost, especially if they're taking more than one class. So this is a course specific announcement that goes out that can help guide students for that week. As an instructor, I always go in and add a little more to that, just if there's any updates I need to tell them. I use this for that function, but if you were designing this for an SME, you wouldn't necessarily know what those little nuances would be. But if you do decide to go in and pre-build these for your instructors, then they may be able to go in and just edit it, and that takes something off of them through the course design that would automatically increase that instructor presence later on when the course is offered. Herb, did you have anything to add there?
No, I don't.
Okay. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is the importance of feedback. And feedback really is critical to establishing a student and instructor connection. And when you're designing courses, you really want to look for ways to help your instructors deliver these high quality feedbacks. And so high quality feedback should be frequent. And so that keeps students connected. It gives them some sort of meaningful feedback at least once a week, whether it's feedback on an assignment or through a thoughtful response to a discussion post. As instructors, I think it's pretty standard across the MS-ITD program at the University of North Alabama to send out some what we call reflections or final thought emails. And so that's kind of once we have finished grading an assignment, we will send out an email that kind of answers the question or gives some kind of participation. I'm not saying we do that after every assignment or discussion post, but we try to do it as frequently as possible because, again, frequent feedback is really important for your students. The next attribute of high quality feedback is immediate. And so you want to do this as soon as possible after students submit work. So when you're creating a course, it's always good to add a communication plan for your students. And so that communication plan can include the turnaround time of whatever SME that you're working with. I know personally for my courses, it's 3 days. Our courses run on an 8-week schedule. And so it's really important to provide really constant feedback and get those assignments graded because the turnaround time is really quick in an 8-week course. And so I know 3 days may not be the standard, but that's what I personally like to use in my course. The next attribute would be discriminating. And so you want to provide feedback that is specific to the student and be more corrective than identifying just strengths and weaknesses. I think identifying strengths and weaknesses is always important, but if you have used that rubric to deduct points for a student, I always give very specific ways to correct that for the next time. So how could you have scored full credit here? And if you have a really good rubric, that's going to be really easy for your SME to do. And the next thing is always supportive. And so you want to make sure that the feedback lends itself to being warm and supportive, and it needs to be personalized as much as possible. And so sometimes when we're giving corrective feedback, especially through text, that can be understood in maybe a way or a tone that was not intended. So it may be good to have conversations with your SMEs just about what supportive feedback is and give them some examples of how to actually do that. Because it can be really hard in an online environment when we're communicating mostly through text to interpret tone. And so just make sure that your SMEs know how to deliver that supportive feedback and know how to keep it high quality without coming across as just completely a critic, because that can be one way that you can start to lose that trust and lose that sense of community that we've worked so hard to build through our course design.
Right. And the thing I'll add to this is that it's important to understand, at least from my perspective, I believe this, that the feedback component of a course is, you should think about it in terms of its instructional, its ability to be instructional. And what do I mean by that? I mean that it's part of the instruction. And so when you set up the ways for the instructor to provide that feedback, and when the instructor knows how to do it well, it also serves as instruction for the student, a way for the student to learn, and a big part of the learning that takes place in an online course. And I would say a very relevant part of the online learning that takes place. And so you have to think about it that way and make sure that it serves that purpose and is set up to play that big role in an online course.
Thanks, Herb. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about are final thoughts. And these are kind of different than the final thoughts that I mentioned earlier that comes from the instructor perspective. This is an opportunity for your students to give feedback to you. And so this type of feedback can be a really good way, again, to build trust and to build community, because throughout this course, we have focused on giving students feedback and designing ways that we can give feedback to students. But it is also a really good idea to build in a mechanism that will allow that feedback to go the other way. So our students can be really reflective, and there are a lot of things that we assume maybe that students know throughout the course design process, or maybe there's something that we assumed when we designed a course that wasn't maybe as clear as we thought it would be. And so creating something like a discussion post that is going to allow students to give final reflections and thoughts about the course back to the instructor is always a good thing. And so you can do this through a discussion post. You can do this through a reflective assignment. If your LMS has a journal function, you can create a journal for students to do this in. The idea here is just building in some kind of mechanism that will allow students to give us their final thoughts and to give us feedback as instructional designers and as instructors on how the course can be improved for the next time. And maybe there was a piece of content that students were missing, and maybe one of your students has identified that and can help you build that into your course for the next time that it is offered. So again, it's just really good to have feedback go both ways.
All right, I don't have anything else to add. Contact information.
Yeah, we can send that. So we would love to hear from you all if you have any questions. We have included our email addresses here at the bottom. So if you guys have any questions or you would like to talk to any of us about the course design process and how we incorporate all of these things within every online course that we create here at the University of North Alabama, we would love to hear from you. But other than that, that's all we have today. We have enjoyed talking to you about instructor presence and hope that you have learned some tips and tricks to build those into courses that will help make that come more naturally to your subject matter experts. So the last thing I'll show you is just our resources slides in case you're interested in visiting any of those. But thank you so much for your attention today, and we hope to hear from you. Have a great afternoon.